Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're doing something wildly ambitious. We are going to capture the absolute essentials of a massive timeline of human history, as laid out in the Book of Historic Leaders, in 8 minutes or less. So, buckle up. Let's dive right into this fast-paced explainer and unpack the stories of the actual men and women who shaped the world we live in. You know, looking at this book, it's just a fantastic reminder that history really isn't just some boring list of dates or abstract forces. It's a dramatic, flesh-and-blood narrative, and it's driven entirely by key individuals. The world we're sitting in today, it was literally carved out by the decisions, the fatal flaws, and the sheer brilliance of a select few people. The material kicks off with this incredibly powerful thought. For better or worse, individuals throughout history have changed the world, and honestly, it is so true. Leadership comes in so many different flavors, right? Sometimes it stems from this blind, unyielding ambition. Other times it's fueled by a profound divine belief, or just an unwavering, stubborn dedication to a specific cause. But the one constant across all of them is their lasting legacy. It kind of makes you wonder what kind of legacy the leaders of our own time are going to leave behind. So here is our visual roadmap for the next few minutes. We're looking at 1, ancient icons and royals, 2, leaders at war, 3, political pioneers, and 4, the final legacy. All right, let's jump straight into section 1, ancient icons and royals. Right off the bat, we see an incredible contrast in how early power was actually wielded. Look at the ancient political cunning of Julius Caesar. Here's a guy who used his massive military triumphs to essentially become a dictator, severely limiting the Roman Senate and, well, effectively destroying the Roman Republic in the process. But then, skip ahead a bit to English royalty like King Henry VIII. When his wife, Catherine of Aragon, couldn't provide him with a male heir, Henry radically restructured England's entire constitution. He literally broke away from Catholicism just to create the Church of England, all to secure his own personal legacy. Talk about a power move. And these ancient icons permanently altered global geography. Take Alexander the Great. He inherited this formidable army from his father, Philip II. And what did he do? He used it to establish more than 20 new cities, spreading Greek culture like wildfire across the known world. In contrast, you have Augustus, born Octavius. He took all the fractured, chaotic pieces of Rome left over after Caesar's assassination, completely defeated his rivals, and established himself as Rome's very first emperor. The old dream of the Roman Republic was officially dead, and a massive imperial power took its place. Moving right along to section 2, leaders at war. Okay, this quote actually gives me chills. Back in 1219, during the total annihilation of the Khwarezm Empire, Genghis Khan delivered a message to the survivors. He said, "I am the flail of God. If you had not committed great sins, God would not have sent a punishment like me upon you." Wow. By the age of 20, he had managed to unite these nomadic Mongolian tribes and used incredibly feared, brutal horsemen to build one of the absolute largest empires the world had ever seen. But warfare wasn't just an ancient phenomenon. It heavily shaped modern Europe, too. Just look at the monumental clash between Napoleon Bonaparte and the Duke of Wellington. Napoleon had literally crowned himself emperor and instigated wars all across Europe, chasing this dream of a united landmass under one single banner. But as the smoke from cannon fire finally lifted over the fields of Waterloo, Wellington had defeated his nemesis. He decided the entire fate of Europe in one single monumental clash. The crucial point here is that these leaders weren't just brute fighters. They were massive strategic innovators. Napoleon completely changed the shape of conflict by using mobile artillery units. Genghis Khan was dangerously adaptable. He famously promoted his generals based on merit alone and allowed them the luxury of making exactly one mistake. And Alexander the Great took his formidable force and actually adopted the cultural customs of the countries he invaded just to secure his hold. They all forced their enemies to adapt to entirely new, unheard-of ways of waging war. But wait, that brings up a really fascinating pivot point. As we inch closer to the modern age, we have to ask, how exactly did the nature of power change? How did leadership evolve from dominating a battlefield with swords and artillery to dominating the ballot box and the broadcasting studio? And that leads us perfectly into section 3, political pioneers. When we hit the modern era, power gets this extreme, almost terrifying duality. On one hand, you have John F. Kennedy. He completely changed the face of politics during the 1960 debates by harnessing the brand new medium of television. His charisma and easy charm allowed him to connect with millions of Americans instantly. On the flip side, you have Adolf Hitler.
He utilized hypnotic mass public speaking to captivate a German public that was completely devastated by World War I and hyperinflation. Both of these men clearly understood mass communication, but Hitler used his influence to plunge the world into its bloodiest conflict and orchestrates horrific atrocities. Modern leadership is also defined by incredible ideological resilience. In a really powerful courtroom speech back in 1963, Nelson Mandela laid bare this reality. Mandela actually started out by establishing the first military wing of the African National Congress to fight the institutionalized injustice of apartheid. Yet, after spending decades in prison, he transitioned into this peaceful symbol of global equality. He famously forgave his captors to become the first president of a newly democratic South Africa. Actually, that kind of intense ideological struggle echoes all the way back to Abraham Lincoln. Here was a man who literally taught himself military strategy just by poring through books. He successfully guided his nation through a devastating civil war, and he pushed for the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery. Yet, just days after the war concluded in 1865, he stepped into a carriage to head to the theater, where his presidency was tragically cut short by an assassin's bullet.
Finally, that brings us to Section 4. The final legacy. When we look back, the contrast in how these leaders are remembered is just staggering. George Washington led military campaigns for independence, sure, but his true legacy was stepping down after 2 terms. He set a precedent that fundamentally established American democracy. Conversely, you look at Mao Zedong, who rose to become chairman of China. His attempts to rapidly industrialize the country through his Great Leap Forward, combined with these ruthless political purges, resulted in the deaths of tens of millions of his own citizens. It just goes to show us that a leader's impact can either build enduring freedom or result in unimaginable tragedy. And the ripples of those specific choices, those are what dictate the world you and I are living in today. We've covered so much ground today. We've journeyed all the way from the sands of ancient empires right up to the television screens of the 1960s, exploring how singular individuals can literally shift the tectonic plates of history. It leaves us with one final provocative question. Who are the leaders writing the history of tomorrow right now? And what kind of chapter are they writing for us? If you enjoyed this, subscribe to In 8 Minutes and never miss what matters.